Hi, this is the Seed Live. This is a very special broadcast today. This is a Seed Live special, and we're doing it on Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a very, very, very special guest today. His name is Rabbi Gary Fernandez.
Yes, and the reason we're doing it on Sunday is because normally we have our regular schedule of Friday evenings at 7. And that is the beginning of Shabbat. So we really wanted to have our very special friend, brother, our rabbi, so many things to us, so many loved things to us. But unfortunately, during Shabbat, it's hard for a rabbi to be on a show. So we wanted to just speak with him today, and I hope that you enjoy hearing from him. And
Yes.
If you have any questions, please feel free. And
we're going to be talking about the lineage of the Sephardic Jews from Spain, which are the Latino Hispanic people.
Yes.
So it's going to be grab your friends, grab your family, and get ready to learn a great history lesson and how it ties into what God is doing today.
And so without further ado, our very special friends, Rabbi Gary Fernandez.
Hey, Rabbi, how are you today?
Hey, shalom to you all. God
Shalom.
bless you all. Shalom.
Shalom.
Blessings.
So how are you holding
Great
up
to see
through all
you.
this? Good. Great to see you. How are you holding up through all this stuff going on?
Well, I live on 11.4 acres of land.
Wow.
And I'm surrounded by horse farms. There's no COVID here.
Yeah, that's a lot of acres to be. To be safe.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as I'm stuck in a small space. We get to breathe. We get to go out and be with the flock. We got a flock of roosters and chickens and turkeys, and so we get to be out there and attend to them and breathe the air out there and get all that sun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So how many people? It's 4 of you, right? Is it 4 of you?
There's 6 altogether here.
Okay, so each of you has to social distance 2 acres each or something like that?
Well, the truth of the matter is that there's plenty to social distance if we want.
Yeah.
Yeah. But since, we're all doing the same thing, basically keeping to ourselves, not going to any particular, festivals or anything like that, and being surrounded by people in that respect.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
So tell us
the
about
house clean.
Tell us about your synagogue.
Well, I'm the rabbi of Synagogue Beth Israel in the city of Sandford, Florida, for 20 years now. It is a Sephardic Kehilat, basically Orthodox, and we reserve and keep the ancient Sephardic rite, and so it's great. Our services are in Hebrew, English, and Spanish. And
wow.
That's pretty trippy. And basically, it's an educational experience for everyone. We get a lot of folks that come to visit who basically are Hispanic, and they have found out in some way, shape, or form that the surnames that they have, someone told them that they're Jewish, and so they come to ask questions, and we help. Like we're going to do here today.
Awesome. So give us a little bit of history. How you became a rabbi? What happened?
To become a rabbi, it takes studying with your rabbi for 7 years, since the time of Moshe till now. It's always been like that. The first rabbi in the world is Moshe. He's considered in Judaism Moshe Rabbeinu, which means Moses, our rabbi. And then the Lord told him that he needed to do what's called semicha, and that's a laying on of hands, so that you can transfer what the Lord has given to you to the person you're laying hands on. And so he did that to Joshua, and then Joshua did that to Caleb, and then so they're considered the first 3 rabbis on earth. And then so since that time till now, when you study with your rabbi, that 7-year period, and then now you're going to be ordained, you have to have 3 rabbis that have had semicha done to them, laying hands on you.
Wow.
Kind of interesting.
And that was commanded by Elohim, God.
Oh yeah, the eternal God was the one who basically laid it down like that. So there's no such thing as, I went on the internet and I now I'm a rabbi because I downloaded some kind of an app.
Here's your certificate, print it out.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of that going around. But and in Judaism we have a saying: the more you learn, the less you know.
Yeah.
So that's why when people say, "Man, you must know a lot," I go, "No, I don't know anything."
That's good. That's good. So before you became a rabbi, what were you in the ministry or?
Well, basically, I was raised where my parents and my family said that they were Catholic, but nobody ever went to church and nobody ever did anything. And then I gave my life to the Lord in 1983, and then basically I felt I needed to study to become a rabbi. And Hurricane George came in Puerto Rico. That's where I was living. And Hurricane George, didn't treat us very well. So we wound up coming here to Florida. And then here in Florida, October 98, I decided to start looking for I needed an Orthodox rabbi who was Sephardic. And then I found my rabbi who, of blessed memory, that passed away last year at 95 years old in May.
Wow.
And he was a Sephardic Jew who was Orthodox, and it was great because he's originally he was from Colombia, Medellin, Colombia, and spoke Hebrew, English, and Spanish perfectly. And he was an engineer all his life. And so anyway, I learned my walk in Judaism, and I learned all of Sephardic, all of the things that go along with being Sephardic from him. Like, for instance, there is if you'll permit me
Sure.
to start with this particular information, there is a list of almost 6,000 Hispanic surnames that are 100% descended from Sephardic Jews of Spain. And if you would like to be able to see that list, we acquired that list in 2001 from Hebrew University. And so basically that list now, today, all sorts of folks have several types of lists on their websites and offering for you to be able to look at and find if your surname is there. I always tell everybody the first thing you want to do if you're Hispanic is write down the both surnames that your mother has on her side of family. It means her father's and mother's side, and then also write down both surnames of your father, which means his mother and father. And that's how you want to start to be able to do a genealogical research of your surnames. For instance, on our website, we have a website called El Proyecto de la ADN Sefaradí, the Sephardic DNA project, and that list is there. That's ADNSefaradi.com. That's ADNSefaradi.com. And when you go there, you go to scroll to the bottom of the page, and it says Apellidos Sefaradi. All right, and that's ADN Sefaradi. So it's Faradi.
Okay.
All right, because that's the way you say Sephardic in Hebrew, Sefaradi.
Sefaradi.
Anyway, but again, when you go there, yeah, that's perfect. When you go there, you find the list at the bottom. It says Apellidos Sefaradi, Sephardic surnames, and you click on it, and then the entire list pops up in alphabetical order. And and that's how you do a genealogical search. If you want to then confirm a little further, go a little deeper, that's when you can actually do a DNA test. Our DNA test, the Sephardic DNA test, or the Sephardic, excuse me, the Sephardic. I'm so used to speaking English and Spanish that I'm only speaking English here.
You could do bilingual. You could do a Spanglish.
Yes, exactly. When you go to our website, the Sephardic DNA Project, we are the only DNA test in the whole world which is exclusively for Hispanics and only for Hispanics. And it basically, we're the only ones using an Israeli lab, and everybody else uses these Laboratorios Americano. And what they do also is they only use the maternal part of the DNA, which 99% of the places are using labs that are Americano, and then they're only using the maternal part. There's no way on earth that you could find, if you have the gene in your system, the Sephardic gene, if you're only using maternal. There's just no way to do it at all. It has to be both maternal and paternal. And so we do that, and we send kits out all around the world. People of Paraguay, everywhere, basically are ordering kits. We send them out, and then it's a swab that's placed in your mouth and collecting the DNA through saliva. And then once we get that kit returned back to us, we ship it off to the lab, and then it's there for about 6 to 12 weeks. And then once the results are shot out to us digitally, we then send a digital certificate with all the information and basically confirming the results. And so now what is a Sephardic anyway, to begin with? There are two types of Jews in the world. You have what's called the Ashkenazi Jews. Those are the European Jews who wear the black hats, the black coats, the long beards, and they have what they call the peyotes, those curls on the side of their heads. Yeah. Thank God that I'm not wearing any of those. All right, anyway, but so those are European Jews, and they've been with that type of culture for about 700 years. The Sephardic culture comes from the time of Moshe till now. That's like a long time. In fact, when you go to Israel, if you haven't been to Israel yet, you have to go. There's no way of saying one day. Basically, say that you're going this year. Yes, so, and that's how you do it. Speak life. So you go to Israel, and when you go to Israel, the first thing you want to do when you're in immigration, the immigration department is where they're going to check your passports, so on and so forth. You want to ask any worker that you see who's maybe sweeping, whatever, cleaning, fixing chairs. Ask them, hey, what kind of Hebrew do they speak here in Israel? And they're going to say Sefaradi. That's exactly what they're going to tell you. Sephardic Hebrew. How do you like those bananas? All right. Yeah. Or shall we say? Yeah, right. It's really incredible. And speaking like for instance, with these surnames, I'm gonna my rabbi, who I just said died last year in May at 95 years old. His wife, she's still alive, a Sephardic Jew from Salonika, Grecia. Salonika, Greece, right? Okay. Well, here's what's happening. In the Balkans, at the time of Hitler, there was hiding in the Balkans 2,000 Sephardic Jews that have been up there for decades. They have been up there hiding, very quiet and living to themselves. And then when Hitler started killing the Jews, he found out that up there in the Balkans, there was 2,000 Sephardic Jews hiding. He sent the Gestapo up there, the Nazis up there. grabbed them all and brought them down to Auschwitz. Of course, Auschwitz being one of the death camps of Hitler. And they started systematically killing them. Within those 2,000 Jews that were up there, Sephardic Jews that were up there, my rabbi's wife's father, mother, and uncle were now in Auschwitz because they were up in the Balkans and got captured. Okay.
Wow.
So anyway, quite interesting, of course, that with this systematic killing, it comes to the point where the United States Marines are now tasked with liberating Auschwitz. And so they're sent to Auschwitz. And when they get to Auschwitz, they see basically all these people that look like Night of the Living Dead. They look like walking skeletons. And the Marines had no idea that that's what they were going to find. They freaked out. But from those 2,000 Sephardic Jews from the Balkans, only 500 remained.
Wow.
And of those 500, my rabbi's wife's father, mother, and uncle survived. Okay, they look like walking skeletons. And the Marines had no. Very interesting is that when they got rescued, of course, my rabbi's wife's father, he lasted to 100 some odd years. And he had a tattoo on his arm, and the tattoo he had on his arm was the numbering system that the Nazis gave you, right? And he with that on his arm, a Sephardic Jew from Salonika, Grecia, right? And with that Nazi numbering system on his arm, and very interesting, his last name, Soto.
Wow.
Okay. And so this is quite interesting because 9 out of 10 Hispanics, when you ask them where are their surnames from originally, they say Spain. Los apellidos de mi familia son de España. But then ask them how they got to Spain. They have no idea. And so here's how that happened. Basically, the first temple period in Jerusalem, the Babylonians attacked Israel and came in through, of course, Jerusalem. When they came into Jerusalem, they basically began to kill and pillage. Well, the Sephardic Jews were not a warring people, and they couldn't defend themselves or even think about fighting against the Babylon. That was just too much for them, so they started running for it. Many went to Salonika, Greece, and they went to all sorts of different other areas in Europe. Okay, and then it was interesting because a good majority of them saw a peninsula that was known as Tarshish. You know it as Tarsus in your Bible, but it's Tarshish. This peninsula, Tarshish, was like the World Trade Center at the time. And what happened is that the Jews said, let's go there. We can hide there. So the Sephardic Jews headed that way. When they got there, there was all sorts of gold and silver trade and trading animals and, oh my gosh, everything you could think of. But when they got there, they saw that land was fertile, it was plush, it was gorgeous, and they decided, vamos a hacer casa aquí. We're gonna make this our home. And they named the place Sefarad. Sefer in Hebrew means book, but not in pages like you know today. It's a scroll. So for instance, the first 5 books of the Bible are on one scroll, so it's called Sefer Torah. Okay, it's called the Torah. So a lot of people, when there are a lot of people say, gee, what kind of Bible do the Jews have? And everybody goes, they have a thing called the Torah. Well, it's the first 5 books of the Bible that you find in your own Bible. Okay, so what happened is that Sefer, again, meaning book. Okay, Sefaradi means the people of the book. And then they named the place Sefarad. So Sefarad means the place of the people of the book. Wow. And so it stayed exactly with that name for many, many, many decades. And while all of Israel was in captivity in Babylon for 70 years, our people están cogiendo fresco, and they were living free there in Sefarad. Okay, but then the 70 years later, the Babylonians release all of Israel. When they release all of Israel, well, they got no place to go because Jerusalem is still in desolation. All of Israel's a mess. So they basically said, well, I guess we're going to have to disperse. And they dispersed to many parts of Europe. And of course, they became what today is known as the Ashkenazi Jews, eventually. But the Sephardic Jews maintained themselves there. I'm going to drink a little water.
Okay. That's a big old water.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And so basically, the Sephardic Jews stayed there and continued to develop the place. But, I mean, there was haciendas, there were castles. I mean, forget it. They owned everything, all the land, all the banks, all the businesses. They owned everything. Then, of course, later on comes the Spanish monarchy and wants to now move into Spain. Well, it's not known as Spain at that time, but they want to now move into this place. And then they wind up calling the place Spain. Okay. But interesting, it's still known as Sefarad. Okay. And it's still known as Spain. And it's really interesting because the Sephardic Jews financially were the ones who helped the Spanish monarchy to be able to establish themselves. They established themselves with Jewish money. Is this something else? So then in 1482, the king and queen of Spain invite the Sephardic Jews to become part of the mother church. And then our people said, you know, we have been fine so far this way, that we are Jews and we keep our religion, and you're Catholic, you keep yours. So we're going to stay this way. Well, the king and queen of Spain didn't like that answer, and they hired a monk named Torquemada. And they asked Torquemada if he could come up with a way to invite the Sephardic Jews to become part of the Mother Church. And he said, sure. And he came up with the Spanish Inquisition. And so from 1482 to 1492, they were killing our people because they did not want to convert. And it's horrible because by 1492, now you have, of course, all of these cathedrals with these humongous plazas on Sundays. It gets packed, and that cathedral gets packed with people. And then, but when they come out, la plaza está lleno de estacas. There has many stakes all over with Sephardic Jews tied to those stakes, and they have all sorts of hay around their legs. And then when all these people come out of church, it's showtime, because now the show is that we are going to burn these Sephardic Jews alive. And so it is recorded in history that as our people are being burned alive, burned at the stake, right? They're screaming, but they're not screaming, "Ay, ayúdame, please help me out, this hurts." No, it's recorded in history that they are saying, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael." That means, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity." And they're screaming this at the top of their lungs when they finally are to the point where they are completely engulfed in flames. Horrible. And they know that they've only got one last breath of oxygen to say something. It's recorded that they screamed out, "Eternal God, please allow from my seed one to continue to bless and praise your holy name and serve you.
Wow.
And then, well, here we all are.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
You know, and so it is very important for Hispanics to know their history as Sephardics, their background, and I suggest, as a Sephardic rabbi, I suggest that as you start this genealogical search, that you would start finding out more about Sephardic heritage, and that you would embrace the culture, so that you're not slapping our antepasados, our ancestors, in the face by embracing somebody else's culture. That's like really terrible. And so, like, for instance, there's when in 1492, when the Sephardic Jews were running for it, many of them decided, you know what, let's go to Israel. And they went to Israel. Now, you can imagine what Israel looked like in 1492. It was a dust bowl. But they went there, and man, sudaron la gota gorda. And they created a gorgeous city. In Israel, there are 4 holy cities, Jerusalem being one.
Wow.
But of those 4 cities, there is a Sephardic city, and it is the one that the Sephardic Jews raised up when they got there in 1492, and it is gorgeous. The food, everything is Sephardic, and it's called Safed with an F. Safed, Safed, Safed. And I'm telling you, that place is phenomenal. It is fabulous. And the rest of Israel is the way it is today because our Sephardic Jews went there in 1492 y sudaron la gota gorda to get this place going, and Israel is what it is today because the Sephardic Jews went there and established themselves to raise up a beautiful city in the Holy Land.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us.
That's your history lesson for the day.
There you go. So there's a prophet named Obadiah who wrote one chapter in the Old Testament. Tell us how essential.
Obadiah chapter 1, verse 20 is the only prophecy in the entire Bible for descendants of Sephardic Jews, and it says it's one chapter only, and it is verse 20. 1 chapter 1 verse 20. When you go there, when you get to verse 20, you wanna with your finger, you wanna go all the way to the middle of the sentence because it's one sentence. But you want to go to the middle where it says the exiles of Jerusalem who are living in Sefarad will inherit the Negev. Negev means south. And so 65% of the land of Israel is called the Negev. And it's one huge giant desert. And that's the place where the children of Israel were for 40 years walking around, and Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. When you read the Bible, you find out that all of the sojourning and all of these journeys was done there in the Negev. And so of all the types of Jews there are in the world, Sephardic and Ashkenazi, it's we Sephardics who are supposed to inherit that land. When you go today there, for about the past 20 years, the government of Israel, they know Obadiah chapter 1 verse 20. Okay, and and I see it's not 1920. It's Obadiah 1:20. Verse 20 only, not 19 and 20.
Okay.
Yeah, not 19 and 21. Verse 20 only. Okay, but anyway, let me go back again. So the government of Israel has, for 20 years, has been irrigating that land and preparing it exactly that for the Sephardic Jews to come. And what's really fabulous is that you'll see an ocean. I mean, it's gorgeous. I mean, an ocean of palm trees, and they look exactly like our palmas de coco that we have like in Puerto Rico, Miami, but there's no coconuts on them. You look straight up, you go, hey, what are those things up there? And they're dátiles, dates. And these dates are humongous, and they are fat, and they are dripping honey. You'll see dripping the date honey. So when you look at the trunk of the palm tree, it looks like somebody took a bucket and poured, this date honey all over the place. And it's interesting because, in the Bible it says that Israel is the land of milk and honey. Mm-hmm. Well, the honey it's talking about is date honey, and they take that honey and they sweeten everything you could think of in Israel with that. And when it says milk and honey, it's not talking about cow's milk. It's talking about goat's milk, la leche de cabra, which is like the best milk on the planet for somebody. Of course, if you tell the Americanos goat milk, they'll go, ew. But, you say goat milk to us, and we're like, yeah, queso blanco de cabra, forget about it. That's like the bomb. But there is something interesting. There is a Sephardic food in Israel that the Sephardic Jews began utilizing this particular dish in the first temple period. And it is still with us today. And it is called burecas. Burecas. Well, burecas today are known as empanadas and empanadillas. And so, of course, you've all had empanadas and empanadillas, but it's always the same when you go to a Latin festival or a Latin restaurant. Mira, tiene empanadilla. Sí, ¿de qué la quiere? Pues la tenemos de carne, de queso y de pizza. You know what I mean? De pollo y de pizza. I mean, so there's only 3 flavors, right? So, but when you go to Israel and you walk into una reposteria, a bakery, oh my gosh, you will find them every flavor you could think of. Spinach and garlic and lamb and just like everything you could think of. And they are fabulous. And they're baked. They've always been baked.
Wow.
So if you've never had a baked empanadilla, you want to take your empanadilla and make it the same way, seal it up with your chicken or your ground beef or your cheese or whatever, and then bake it. And the best thing about it is that you could take and brush olive oil on that, and you could put garlic herb seasoning on both sides and then put it to bake. Boy, when that comes out, it tastes way different than a fried one.
So that's a temple food, right?
Well, I mean, not that it was a temple food per se. It was a Sephardic food per se. Okay. So the Sephardics, of course, were the ones who took care of in the first temple period. They were the ones who were in charge of taking care of the temple. And so, of course, everybody in Israel was eating burecas. It's just a normal thing, just like today. They're still eating burecas.
Yeah, and just about every Latin country has their own renditions. The way they make it, different ways.
That's like really cool. Whoops, I got a call trying to come in, and I got to hit decline, and there it is. Okay. So anyway, if anybody has questions, that folks might be on the line that may have some questions, or that they could do that. I don't know why I keep getting a call coming in from Jersey.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us about, because throughout the years we've talked, about so many different things, and we've just learned so much in that time period. I know one of the things that stands out to me is the language, the Ladino language that you told us about.
Oh, yes.
So similar to Spanish.
Yeah. And you told us the story of that.
Is the original language of the Sephardic Jew, and it is where our Spanish comes from. And so, for instance, let's just say in Spanish we say bendito, right? Blessed. Mm-hmm. In Ladino you say bendicho, right? You say hijo, hija in Spanish, and you say hijo, hija in Ladino. So it's quite interesting. I have a friend who he's from what's the name of that place? The Canary Islands in here in the Caribbean, and he says that he tells me one day, he says Rabbi, my last name, everybody pronounces it Mejias, right? And he goes, but in the Canary Islands, we're Magias. And I said, yeah. And the reason being is because the Sephardic Jews are from the Canary Islands, and they're the ones who, of course, when they would not say Mejias, they would say Mejias.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So, talk to us about you were speaking about Obadiah and the history of like when Christopher, you told us about when the Spaniards took the Sephardic Jews, they were on the ship with Christopher Columbus and or Colón,
right.
Cristobal Colón, and they wound up on the shore of Dominican Republic. What happened?
Okay, that's a very interesting thing, because of course when in 1492 when it came to the point that the King and Queen of Spain wrote a law basically throwing all the Sephardic Jews out by a certain day. They had to be out. So Columbus is not really his name. Everybody says Christopher Columbus. His name was Cristobal Colón, and he was a Sephardic Jew. And interesting, not only was he a Sephardic Jew, but that was his ploy to try to help the Sephardic Jews escape, because these people were in dungeons. So he went to the queen and says to the queen, Isabella, and he says, Reina, I have a problem. Nadie se quiere montar en las carabelas que mandaste a crear, a construir, porque que ellos creen que el mundo está plano. Y entonces, pues, yo necesito ayuda. And she goes, man, toma, aquí están las llaves del calabozo. Take all those criminals out of there. So he starts opening up all the dungeons, and the people start running for it. People start running on his ships. Number one, he fills the 3 ships with the people who were coming out of there. But at the same time, there's this great escape, and a great majority of those people in those dungeons wind up in Portugal. And when the king of Portugal, man, he's going, come on, guys, yeah, come on, you could come here. And then he goes, when the last Jew came through those doors, those gates, he said, "Tráncame esto," and he put them all in slavery, all of them. Horrible. The Sephardic Jews coming, like we say, the Guatemala a Guatapeor. Yeah. They wound up coming right out of those, out of the hands of the Inquisition, and wind up, boom, in slavery over there. But now the people who took off with Colón, the very first place that he landed was the Dominican Republic. Okay, it wasn't Dominican Republic. It got named Hispaniola. Now, interesting though, is that it gets named Hispaniola. They see these white sand beaches. The water is crystal clear, but then they see this jungle, and so the Spaniards don't want to get down from the ships. They're afraid, lions and tigers and bears, and then so they're afraid, right? And so they tell the Sephardic Jews, "Bájense ustedes a chequear qué es lo que hay aquí," and they're like, we're not warriors or anything of that sort. And they go, "Oh, really? Here, I'm going to take your kids and your wives, okay? And we're going to put these swords right on their necks. And if you don't get off this ship to go check, we're going to kill them." So they got off the ship, and they're like tiptoeing on that, on that sand, and looking around and afraid too that something might come out. And sure enough, this is what it says in Dominican history. Okay, in Dominican history, it says that when the Sephardic Jews are walking around on this white sandy beach with that jungle, well, from that jungle started to come out of that jungle the Taino Indians, because the Taino Indians are the indigenous Indians of the entire Caribbean, right? And so the Spaniards are seeing that these Indians have come out, and they don't, and it says in Dominican history que los españoles se estaban rascando la cabeza porque no entendían cómo era que esos indios estaban hablando con los judíos sefaradí. They had no idea. And then we wind up finding out that in Puerto Rico, that there was about a little over 126 years ago, there was a Catholic priest in Guayanilla, Puerto Rico, who basically discovered about 80 river rocks, 80 good-sized river rocks that had some type of writing on them. And so he was not only a Catholic priest, but he was an archaeologist also. So he got together with his colleagues who are archaeologists to see what type of writing this is, and nobody could figure it out. So then the years went by, and I don't know, I think maybe about 3 years ago, this collection of rocks is now in the hands of the University of Puerto Rico, and this gentleman named Reniel Rodriguez, an archaeologist, is in charge of this. And what happens is that he winds up contacting me, and he says to me and gives me the story about these rocks. And I said, well, you know, we have cell phones, so take a picture of some of these rocks and, you know, the writing, and send it to me. So when he sends it to me, I'm sitting there with my mouth open going, you got to be kidding me. Because he had just finished telling me that they did the carbon-14 test to find out the age of these rocks, and that it was before the time of Colón.
Wow.
Right? And then I have some colleagues in Israel. I send them the pictures. I go, please tell me that I'm not seeing things. What do you see on these rocks? And they looked at the rocks, and this is etched in, not written, but with paint, etched in. And it was Hebrew. And so basically that carbon-14 test on those showed that was before Colón. And then we wind up finding out that first dispersion of Jews that had left because of the attack in Jerusalem by the Babylonians. Well, many of them went different places, and some of them wound up in Israel. Some of them kept going, and they kept going, and they found themselves in the Caribbean islands where nobody was. And they inhabited those islands. And the bottom line is, those Sephardic Jews who escaped basically became the Taino Indians of the Caribbean. How do you like them bananas?
Wow.
Plátanos.
That's
the deal?
Awesome.
I mean, that's
so
too
awesome.
serious. So now the first governor of the Dominican Republic, his name was Diego de Colón. Diego de Colón. First, he was the son of Cristobal Colón. And of course, you know, basically he and his father used to write letters to one another. And a couple of these letters are in a museum in Spain, and they are writing in Spanish to each other. They don't write in Italian, because everybody says, oh, I mean, I love my Italian friends, but man, when Columbus Day comes, they're all celebrating and having a ball because he was Italian. Well, sorry, if he was Italian, why was he writing to his son and his son writing to him in Spanish all the time? Not only that, but you'll find that Cristobal Colón, when he would sign his letters, he would sign them in Hebrew.
Wow.
How about that?
Wow.
Get out of town by sundown.
So do you believe that God raised him up to get the Jews out of Spain?
Well, they wound up filling up what? They wound up filling up all of the Caribbean. because after his first trip, his next trip, he landed where? He landed in Cuba. And then the next trip, he landed in Puerto Rico. And so he kept doing that until he wound up filling up Latin America with all of these people. That's what he kept doing.
Wow.
And so Mexico is forget it. I mean, so I'm constantly being contacted every week by dozens of people that are either calling my number or they're reaching out to me on WhatsApp from the other countries, all the Latin countries, and they're all telling me the same thing. Somebody told me that my surnames are Jewish. Can you help me? So there's like this big explosion happening amongst Hispanics worldwide. It's not happening to anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the costumbres that you mentioned to us before that are ingrained in our lives or in our history that were actually come from Sephardic background?
Yes, like for instance, when in Puerto Rico, for instance, and in many cultures, Latin cultures, when someone dies in your family, basically the first thing you do is you cover the mirrors. All the mirrors in the house are covered. And so it's interesting because a lot of people go, yeah, that's right. That, my gosh, we've had that for forever in our family, and we don't know why.
Yeah,
and they say they don't know why. Well, that's 100% Jewish. No other culture on the planet does that except for the Jews. And so basically, the reason that we cover the mirrors when someone dies is because we should not be looking in the mirror to find out how good we look, for this wake, for the velorio. That we should be, our minds should be constantly concentrating on the loss that we just had. So it's a thing of vanity. And also, when you see, like in Puerto Rico, for instance, there was a time when everybody, they didn't have running water in the houses, and they had latrinas outside and stuff. So when it would come, they would be working in the sugarcane fields all week long, right? But then when Friday came, everybody went to the rivers to go take a bath, right? And then, of course, it's Friday, and so now everybody's taking their bath. But the Sephardic Jews would take their bath, and then they would dress the best, perfume themselves real nice, because they were going to celebrate Shabbat behind closed doors. And then it's interesting because it got to the point that if somebody in Puerto Rico, even today, if somebody walks in Puerto Rico, walks in nicely dressed, smelling really nice of perfume or cologne, and they walk into a doctor's office, let's say, right? Or a friend's house or something, the people say, "Oye, qué olores, hoy no es sábado." Kind of interesting. That's still till today. That phrase is used. Hoy no es sábado, huh? Yeah, because who did that? The Sephardic Jews did that.
So
it's incredible. Oh, and of course, there's a thing that a lot of grandmothers have today that comes Friday night. Everybody's dressed real nice. It's the best food, of the week. During the week, everybody's eating a grilled cheese or a tuna sandwich, But no, Friday everything is the best. You're all dressed nice, and then the grandmother comes, and before everybody gets to eat, she lights 2 candles on the table, and she don't even know why. She just knows that that's a tradition.
Wow.
Well, that's the tradition of the Sephardic Jew, lighting 2 candles for Shabbat on Friday night.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's amazing.
That's a beautiful history and culture.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sure is. And that food is awesome. Boy, forget it. Sephardic food is that's why the Latinos, if you buy, and you could buy Sephardic cookbooks online, just put Sephardic cookbook and boom, a bunch of them are going to pop up. And I'll tell you, you will sit there flabbergasted when you open those pages and you start seeing, wait a minute, this is what they eat in Colombia. Wait a minute, this is what they eat in Uruguay. Wait a minute, this is what they eat in Paraguay. Wait, and that's what you're going to see in a Sephardic cookbook. From my rabbi's wife's father, when he came to the United States, he and a group of Sephardics in Georgia, what they did, they landed there and they opened the Sephardic synagogue there. And then so they all got together and they said, let's come up with a fundraiser. So the fundraiser was that they got all of their Sephardic recipes, from decades and decades, centuries, and they put them together and made a cookbook. And the cookbook title is Come con Gana.
Oh, I like that. That's pretty cool.
That is nice.
It's really cool.
I'll have to look that one up, see if I can make something from it.
Yeah, we have it here.
So in Obadiah, you were talking in Obadiah. Can you go over what the Sephardic Jews are the last to return to Israel, correct?
Yeah. What's interesting is if you go to when you go to Israel, when you go to Israel,
right?
You want to ask regular people, not religious people. You want to ask regular people, hey, where are the Sephardic Jews? Because you already know they're supposed to be in the Negev, but the Negev is still, being developed, and it's a big desert. In fact, the mangoes there grow to 6 and 7 pounds without fertilizer.
Wow.
Do you know what a 6 or 7 pound mango is? That's like a watermelon. That's ridiculous. But anyway, so they found 20 years ago the Negev, underneath the Negev, being a desert all this time, they found that a giant cistern of water underneath the Negev from one end to the other. So that's 65% of the land of Israel that's called the Negev has a cistern of natural water underneath. And so then they started to irrigate this water, pumping it from underneath, and they're using that to irrigate the land. And that's how they're making all of these wonderful fincas, of all this great fruit and so on. And but it's interesting, again, when you ask where are the Sephardic Jews, they say, well, they're in Latin countries, and they're supposed to be here with us, and we really desire them to be here. Nosotros anhelamos que los sefaradíes estén aquí, pero están metidos en iglesias en Sudamérica, en Latinoamérica, y nosotros anhelamos que estén aquí con nosotros. So it's interesting because, of course, it's going to come to the point where Obadiah is going to come to pass, and it has to come to pass before Mashiach comes, because Mashiach is not going to come to the land of it. Well, first of all, he has to come to establish the kingdom of heaven here on earth. He's not going to come to establish the kingdom of heaven here on earth the way people are saying today. Oh, Messiah could come whenever he wants. No, he can't. For instance, in Judaism, it says that the world will not endure more than 6 millennia, and then Mashiach will come. Well, why is it when you ask, when is Messiah coming, people say, well, he when he comes, he's going to come to reign for 1,000 years. Everybody says that, right? Well, obviously he's going to reign for 1,000 years because he comes in the 7th millennia. That's 1,000 years, right? But remember that in Judaism it says that the world will not endure more than 6 millennia, and then Mashiach will come. Well, think about it. 6 millennia. So right now, in our in the biblical calendar, which basically is from the time of Ha-Adam to now. Okay, so we are in the year 5780. Coming up now in September will be what we call Rosh Hashanah, the biblical New Year. It's not the Jewish New Year, because it has nothing to do with the Jews. It just so happens to be that God in Leviticus 11 established Leviticus 23 established the biblical calendar, and it says there that basically that these are the feasts of the Lord. It doesn't say it's the feast of the Jews. It's the feast of the Lord. So what happens is that when he comes, he establishes the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Okay. Wow. So again, we're in the year 5780. We're going to be in 5781 coming up in the Jew in Rosh Hashanah. But now 5780. Okay, fine. So if you were to write down or in your calculator, type out in your calculator on your phone, for instance, 6,000, and then subtract 5780, 5,780. So what do you come up with? You wind up with like 200 and some odd years, like 220 some odd years. And so that's how long it's going to take for Mashiach to come to establish the kingdom of heaven here on earth. So now the thing is that people get pissed off. They get all upset. Oh my God, it's gonna take like over 200 years for him to come. Well, 2,000 years ago, everybody swore that Mashiach was going to come, like tomorrow, right? Well, he didn't come tomorrow. So the generations who's the closest to the coming of Mashiach is us.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
Interesting. Wow. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yep.
So back around, I think it was 2014, was it, or 2013? The Spain lifted that exile for the Sephardic descendants.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I got called by a friend of mine in Puerto Rico. Her name is Sonia Valentin. She had a program at the time that was called Entre Nosotras, and then so it was like a variety talk show, and she gives me a call on the phone and goes, "Oh man, did you see the news today?" And I said, "What news?" "Yeah, I'm here in Florida." Yeah, she's calling me from Puerto Rico. She goes, "Man, Spain just finished putting that same list of surnames that you've had for years. They put it on a website and said if in case you happen to see your surname there, well, give us a call and we might be able to offer you a citizenship." So wow. She says, "Can you come to the studio tomorrow?" So I came to the studio, and the first time I was on a program with her was in 2010. That was the first time that I went to Puerto Rico. I was the very first person talking about on TV, and I'm not talking about Christian TV or anything. No, on public television, commercial TV, Univision, Telemundo, talking about the Sephardic surname list, right? And everybody thought I was crazy. People actually said I was a liar. That, no, ese rabino se lo está inventando. Ese rabino está mintiendo. And then so even on her show, there was a lot of people in the studio, cameramen, all saying that yo me la estaba inventando. Now I get invited back again because of this thing that Spain was offering. And when I go on the program, we're laughing all over the place because everybody in there is not saying that I'm crazy anymore. Ya, bueno, parece que el rabino está loco.
Mira, tenía punto.
Yeah.
Tenías razón.
Yep.
Lo sabía.
Yep. Unbelievable.
So what about Israel having the law of return? Is it the law of return for?
Well, the bottom line is that there is not a law of return for Sephardi. There is, of course, the law of return for a Jew. For the Jews. In order for you to become a citizen in Israel, there is a set of documents that they require. For instance, something as simple as the fact that you may have a certificate that proves that you have a loved one buried in a Jewish cemetery. If you have a certificate like that that says you have a loved one, you know, an uncle, an aunt, a mother, a father, a grandmother, whatever, you know, great grandmother, buried in a Jewish cemetery, that alone, they'll grant you citizenship, because that proves that you are Jewish. You see, so it doesn't go by the surnames. Everybody in Israel, from the guy who cleans the streets all the way to Benjamin Netanyahu, they know our surnames and they know they're Sephardic, but the law doesn't have that. So several years ago, about 3 years ago, I'm called by my colleagues in Israel from the the Jewish Agency. The Jewish Agency is the only organization on earth that for the past 20 years are the ones that give you citizenship. Okay, they have that stamp that says citizenship yes, citizenship no. And so they gave me a call because I happen to be the official spokesperson to Ezra International since 2010. Ezra International, of course, is an organization rescuing the poorest of Jews from 20 different countries from the horrible anti-Semitism and returning them to live in the land of Israel. And so basically, they basically gave me a call. Rabbi, can you meet us in New York? I said, sure. I took off and I went there, and they had a meeting that in one of their offices in the Israeli consulate in New York. And they said, Rabbi, we see that you have this interest to be able to do this Sephardic DNA project, and we ask that you bring to us 20,000 confirmations of Hispanic DNA that is determined and confirmed to be Sephardic. 20,000. And then so that we can consider amongst ourselves here in the government of adding your certificate from that project exclusively to the law of return. So for instance, when you apply to become a citizen in Israel, the very first question at the top of that particular solicitud, or application is, do you want to do citizenship religious or non-religious? So put down non-religious. There's not anybody on earth that would be able to start talking to you about converting and all that. I'm from Puerto Rico, and there's a lot of erroneous information on the internet from Puerto Rico stating that in order to become a citizen in Israel, you have to, it's a must, you're obligated to have to convert. That's a lie.
Wow.
Okay. So because once that question is right there at the top, do you want religious citizenship or non-religious? You put non-religious, that's the end of that. There is a law in Israel that it is against the law for them to proselytize or try to convert anybody. Wow. How about them apples? Okay?
That's interesting.
So anyway, the second part of that application says, please show us one or more of the documents listed here. So the documents listed there are the ones that prove that you're Jewish. Okay. But unfortunately, if you don't have not even one of those documents, like I said about maybe being one that you have that proves that you have someone buried in a Jewish cemetery, well, basically, if you don't have any of those, you can't apply for citizenship because you have to have it. So basically, we believe that the eternal God will open the door soon enough so that we will have 20,000 confirmations of Hispanic DNA determined to be Sephardic that we then can hand over to our colleagues in the Israeli government, and then they could sit down and contemplate how they can add our certificate to the law of return.
So what if, for example, obviously a lot of Hispanics that don't even know about this, but may have some of the cultural costumbres, right, that you talked about, right? So what if they did a DNA test and that came back, showing that they had DNA from Sephardic, Is that proof enough for them or no?
No, because on that list of documents, it's documents, and on that list of documents that that they have when you're applying for citizenship, DNA is not there.
Okay, so
that's why that's why my colleagues really want for us to wind up with this 20,000 mark, so that this way they can consider putting our certificate on that particular list of documents.
Okay.
So what would you say would be the biggest thing that you would attribute to the forgotten culture, history? What throughout
the biggest thing is the biggest thing that has been forgotten is because of the fact since our ancestors had to hide their Jewishness. So since they had to hide their Jewishness, they're still doing it till today. Hispanics,
or they don't
Hispanics
even know
have, Hispanics basically till today are still hiding the Sephardic heritage. So for instance, you'll wind up having an old uncle or an old grandmother or great grandmother who's on her deathbed. And basically she calls her children over to her. And she's about to kick the bucket. It's her last breath. And she says, sons, daughters, I have to tell you something. Le tengo que decir algo a ustedes. Somos judíos sefaradí. And then she drops dead. And then this tostón is in these people's hands. And they're like, what the heck was that? What did she just say? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
And then they're contacting me on the phone, telling me, we just found out that we're descendants of Sephardic Jews. Can you help us?
Wow.
And
that's happening a lot more and more and more.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's happening big time. Think about it. Los Sefaradi, the Hispanic, they don't want to tell anybody they're Jewish because they believe another Inquisition is going to happen and that the families will be, will be hurt or killed. So they don't say anything.
Yeah.
That's why everything in our culture is hidden. Look at the Ashkenazi culture. They're not hiding nothing.
Yeah.
For 700 years, they've been showing everybody that they're Jewish and they still get attacked for being Jewish.
True. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, Rabbi, this has been very informative and awakening, really. This is an awakening moment for a lot of Latinos and Hispanics that are watching this, so they would understand, that I always felt that, that scripture that says the first shall be last and the last shall be first, kind of pertains to us in a way, because we were blinded to who we really are, and the blessing, not only in our spiritual blessings, but our natural blessings that we have through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
That's right.
And a lot of Latinos, which is interesting, a lot of Latinos have a yearning for Israel, but they don't know why.
Exactly. And we're the only people on the earth that this is happening to. Nobody else is. This is happening. It's not happening to anybody else. Only to the Hispanics. If you'll permit me, I like to give my phone number because I always give my phone number when I'm on TV, when I'm on the radio, wherever I'm being interviewed, and they can contact me directly there. My phone number is 321-578-1290. De nuevo, 321-578-1290. Rabino Fernandez, Rabbi Fernandez, at your service.
Awesome. And you know what? I want to tell a little testimony about how we met. And it was back in 2013, right? No, before that. It was after our first Cuban Sandwich Festival that we
That's
did.
Right.
And Jolie had gotten an email from you because you had worked, it was something about a magazine in New York.
Graphic
artist in New York with, Entonces, So Jolie looks at the email and she calls me over and she goes, "It says Rabbi Gary
And he's
Fernandez."
Puerto Rican.
And I said, "What? Say what?" So right away I got on the phone and I called him and we spent like 2 to 3 hours talking.
Yeah.
And I was blown away because there was and I have to share this. When I was a child, even, and then at the age of 21, there was a prophetic word over me. First by a Cuban lady in Tampa. She was very well known, who always, you know, was a had a very good relationship with God, and she had prophesied about, you know, my connection with the Judíos, that there was something there. And then it happened again before I entered into ministry school. I was given the same exact word, and so it stayed stagnant in me, you know, throughout my life until that year that we met. And then I remember God saying, "Okay, remember what I said when you were younger," and so it came to life.
Wow.
And so because it was exciting, because now we know who we really are. We know who we really are, and there's a purpose in all this, and I believe it with all my heart, you know. And you know, you've been in our life ever since, in our lives ever since then, you know. And so if you're in your Kila is in Sandford, Florida. If you want to give the address and the times that you guys gather.
Sure. Basically, we are in Sandford, Florida, 301 South Maple Avenue in Sandford, Florida, and that is 32771. And we are Synagogue Beth Israel. I've been the head rabbi there for 20 years, and we have a website, and that website is www, and then it's .b like boy, I like indigo, 1948.com. B like boy, I like indigo, 1948.com. And that is Synagogue Beth Israel.
Okay.
Yep,
awesome.
That's the one right there. Perfect.
That's awesome. And we're gonna put up his phone number so that you, if you're Latino or Hispanic, and this is just something that you're learning right now or hearing right now, plus this video will keep playing, to contact Rabbi and get educated about your who you are, Hebrew roots, our Jewish roots, and how far they truly go back, and what God is doing today during these times, you know. So we just want to say thank you, Rabbi, for being with us. It's always good to see you. And we would like if you would say a prayer blessing
in closing.
Great. Elohei Abraham, Elohei Isaac, Elohei Yaakov, great, mighty, and awesome God, most high God, one true living God. I present to you all of the folks who are involved in this Seed Live broadcast, and Lord God, that you would bless them in their going in and going out. That, Lord God, that you would cause that they would all walk in divine health from the top of their head to the soles of their feet, that you would supply each and every need, eternal. Not only that all their needs would be met, but so that they can help to meet the needs of many others. And this we pray in your name, and we thank you right now. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. We love you, Rabbi.
Love you too. Thank you guys very much.
Everyone.
It was always at your service. Siempre aquí para servir.
Thank you, and we will have you back again.
Yes.
Thank you. Shalom.
God bless
Shalom.
you.
God bless.
Shalom.
Shalom.